Good morning. At this time, I will invite Jen and Brian up to perform our opening words and our chalice lighting.
You do not have to be me in order for us to fight alongside each other.
I do not have to be you to recognize that our wars are the same.
What we must do is commit ourselves to some future that can include each other and work toward that future with the particular strengths of our individual identities.
And in order for us to do this, we must allow each other our differences at the same time as we recognize our sameness. We thank Audre Lorde for these words.
We bid you welcome. We do not ask what you believe or expect you to think a certain way, but only that you try to live a kindly, helpful life with the dignity proper to a human being. Welcome all who believe that religion is wider than any sect and deeper than any set of opinions. Welcome all who might find in our friendship strength and encouragement for daily living. Good morning and welcome to the Universalist Unitarian Church of Farmington. My name is Mark Petrie, and I have, what have I been? I've been a member at UUCF since 2017. This morning, we are fortunate to have two guest speakers, Jennifer Teed and Brian Church. You may recognize these names because they have both been had a strong connection to UUCF. Jen was the Director of Religious Education from 2006 to 2011, and Brian attended the RE program in the 2000s. We're delighted to welcome them to our pulpit today. Oops, still dealing with this thing here. Okay, here we go. Maybe I'll have to do that. I'd like to extend a special welcome to any visitors today. After the service, we invite you to stay for coffee hour downstairs in Adams Hall. Religious education classes are being held in the RE classrooms during the service. An usher can direct you to those locations if needed. Joys and sorrows can be shared later in the service after the offering. You are welcome to come up to the microphone. We also have blue Joys and Sorrows cards in the pews that can be filled out and given to the ushers during the offering and read by me later in the service. If you would like to text your joys and sorrows, you can see the phone number listed on page 2 of the order of service, and please include your name in the text. At this time, we will move forward with our shared affirmation of mission in your orders of service. Please join me in stating our mission. We seek answers everywhere, include everyone, and live with compassion. And announcements today, I believe Jesse Sanchez can kick us off with an announcement about our mask policy. Hold your applause till the end, please.
Hello. Just wanted to say, first of all, thank you for everybody for complying with our mask policy up till this point. I think that we wanted to potentially stop masking maybe in January, but I wanted to make sure that people had a chance to voice any questions or concerns about that. I do know the flu season is pretty bad this year, and I don't know if most folks know RSV has also been very bad this year, especially for the younger children, but it also affects some of our older population, and I just wanted to be sure that people understood the risks and also the potential to possibly go unmasking probably in January. So if anybody would like to discuss or talk about it and see if you have any questions or concerns, just maybe talk to me or some of the members of the board, and then we can see if we can move forward in January. So, okay, thank you.
Hi, Barb Iovan with Social Justice. I have a couple of announcements. Starting today and for the next 2 weeks, at the back of the sanctuary, we will be promoting something that we've embraced in social justice with an organization called Zahara. And what we're doing is we're going to decorate our tree with little sweaters. These represent how we can change and help people in Afghanistan really in 3 ways. Every $20 that we can donate will allow one person in Afghanistan to go to a shop and buy yarn. When they have the yarn, they'll turn and give it to a knitter who will then knit a sweater, and then they in turn will give it to a child in Afghanistan. So you can donate any amount and get a sweater that you can hang or will hang for you on the tree. It's just that every $20 does that, but you can donate any amount. And Gloria had a great idea that I'm going to do next week. She said she's buying 7 at the full amount for each of her grandchildren as a Christmas gift. And I think that's really wonderful because then she'll give a lesson with that, but just an idea. The second announcement on a much lighter note is that the popcorn has already arrived. If you ordered through the brochure through me, we got it a whole week earlier, so that's downstairs, and I'm really happy that we surpassed the goal and netted $756 in just 4 days of doing this online. Thank you again, everybody, especially Marilyn Tripp, who had the biggest sale, for doing that. Thank you.
Hi, Linda Brown for fundraising today. Speaking of giving and earning for the church, I'm here to promote again Raise Right, and those are the gift cards that if you purchase a gift card, a percentage of what you have, the dollar amount that you purchase goes back to the church. And this year in particular, the Raise Right company is, right now, for instance, there are 207 different vendors that have increased their give back for the holiday season. So instead of 4%, maybe they're giving 8% of your dollar amount back to the church. It's really easy to sign up. It's really easy to do. And the great thing is at this time, well, any time, but you know, the holiday season is coming up, so if you give gift cards to people, this would be a great way. Order your gift cards through Raise Right. You can either get physical cards in some case sent to you, or you can send e-cards by email to whoever you want to gift to. So I've got a flyer here with some of the tips and tricks, including how to order those gift cards for gifts. And this has been in the e-blast and the magnet for the past month or so. So I've put them all together. I'll have these at the back of the church to hand out, and you can then order all of your holiday needs can be taken care of and give money back to the church too.
Yes, and kids, tell your parents that you can get Nintendo gift cards through that program.
And iTunes.
Yes.
Boy, gonna have to sign up for those. Good morning. Membership, we have a couple announcements. I'll talk first about chalice circles. They've been pretty successful. We started them out a month ago. Last one we had like 10 people there on Tuesday, that Tuesday night. Next chalice circle is this Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. Hope to see a lot of you there. The topic is going to be Ellen's leading it up, and the topic is going to be hope. Not her. The general concept of hope. So hope you know.
Awesome. I am Hope. Not the topic for Tuesday. But I do want to invite you all to our holiday party that we are having 2 weeks from today. That'll be Sunday the 18th after our all music service. We are doing like a holiday potlucks, dessert potluck, so bring a batch of cookies or a sweetbread, whatever you like to bake for your holiday desserts. And let me know if you have any questions. Excited to see you all for the holiday party on the 18th.
And one more quick note about the holidays. As you may or may not know, Christmas Eve, the RA kids are going to be performing a Christmas pageant. It's a UU Christmas pageant, so it will be a little bit different than your normal Christmas pageant. So it'll be a lot of fun. We'll have the angels and shepherds and a cow and maybe a unicycle. Typical things. So please come on. It'll be a 3 o'clock performance, if you will, service. And we're working hard, and it's going to be really great. And Diana's working with the kids, so the music is going to be beautiful. So come on down and support us.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Nothing's happening Christmas Day. Okay. Stay home and enjoy with your family, yes. Okay. Please check the UUCF website and emails for other announcements about upcoming events. And now please rise as you are willing and able for our first hymn found in the Teal hymnal, number 1031, Filled with Loving Kindness. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May I be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole. And Jenny is going to come up and share the message for all ages with us. Oh, I'm sorry? Oh, we're sharing the video. Okay, everybody. We'll see the video.
Welcome to Stories from Our Principles. Today we're going to read Desmond Gets Free by Matt Meyer. Desmond the Mouse lived in the most beautiful meadow in all the land. Every morning Desmond woke with the sunrise and would spend the day playing in the meadow. And every evening Desmond would go to sleep in the middle of that meadow under the beautiful starry sky. One night, though, Desmond awoke when it was still dark out. He tried to roll over to a more comfortable spot, but something wasn't right. Desmond realized that his tail was stuck right to the ground and beginning to throb with pain. He felt behind him, and there was a huge boulder that seemed to have fallen in the middle of the meadow, just on his tail. Desmond pushed on the boulder and tugged on his tail. He pushed on the boulder and tugged again on his tail, and he pushed and tugged again, but it was no use. When he was out of breath and had just about given up, he saw a giraffe nearby in the grass. Good news, he thought. Giraffe, Desmond cried, could you please push the boulder a few inches in the other direction so that I could go free? The giraffe looked at Desmond and laughed the way giraffes do. Silly mouse, said the giraffe. That's no boulder. That's an elephant that's fallen asleep in the middle of the meadow on your tail. Well, if you could just wake the elephant and ask him to roll over just a few inches in the other direction, I could go free. Well, replied the giraffe, you know what they say about letting sleeping elephants lie. I find it's best not to get involved in other animals' business. I find it's best to remain neutral in times like this. Desmond quietly replied, well, I do not appreciate your neutrality. The giraffe wandered off, and Desmond tried calling out to the elephant to wake him up, but those giant ears were just too far away on the other side of that giant elephant body. So again, Desmond pushed on the elephant and tugged on his tail, and he pushed and he tugged, and he pushed and he tugged, but it was no use. When he was out of breath and had just about given up again, a gazelle wandered by. Gazelle, he cried, Gazelle, it seems that an elephant has fallen asleep on my tail in the middle of this meadow. I'm stuck and it hurts. I wonder if you could gently wake him up and ask him to roll over just a few inches in the other direction so I might go free. Well, said the gazelle, I see your problem there, but you know what they say about letting sleeping elephants lie. I find it's best not to get involved in other animals' business. I find it's best to remain neutral in times like these. Desmond replied almost to himself this time, I do not appreciate your neutrality. Desmond tried again to call out to the elephant. He tried again to push the giant animal away. He tried again and again to tug his little tail free, but it was no use. When he was out of breath and had just about given up for the last time, he saw another mouse wandering through the meadow. My name is Nelson. Nelson, this giant elephant has fallen asleep on my tail in the middle of this meadow. I wonder if you might run over and call out into his giant ears and ask him to roll over just a few inches in the other direction so I could go free? Of course, said Nelson. Nelson ran all the way to the other end of that giant elephant body, and he called up to those giant elephant ears at the top of that giant elephant head. But the elephant didn't budge. The elephant heard Nelson's small voice far away, but he was too comfortable to move. Nelson ran back to Desmond, a little out of breath, and said, I have an idea. Don't move. He ran off. I won't, muttered Desmond. A little while later, though, Nelson emerged through the tall grass, and he wasn't alone. Nelson had found 3 other mouse friends to help him, and each one of them had also brought another 3 friends. The whole group of them ran over to the giant head of that elephant. One mouse scrambled up onto the shoulders of another, and another mouse scrambled up on her shoulders, and then one after another they climbed up until the whole group of them had formed a long mouse ladder right up the side of that elephant. At last Nelson climbed up the shoulders of his mouse friends, one on top of the other, until he was way up in that giant elephant head, standing right next to that elephant ear. Excuse me, he called out right into that ear. It seems you've fallen asleep on my friend's tail in the middle of this meadow. I wonder if you could just roll over a few inches in the other direction so he could go free. The giant elephant made a giant groan. I'm comfortable. Go away. So Nelson asked more of his friends to climb up. One by one, they helped each other up the side of the elephant. One by one, they called out into that giant elephant ear on top of that giant elephant head. Again, the elephant made a low groan. Comfortable. Go away. Then Nelson had an idea. He whispered to the mice, and then all at once they yelled out together, Excuse us. It seems you've fallen asleep on our friend's tail in the middle of this meadow. Roll over a few inches in the other direction so he can go free. This time, all those voices together, right next to the elephant's ear, were too loud to ignore. I was comfortable where I was, but I'll move over if you just agree to stop making such a racket, the elephant cried out. And then the elephant rolled over just a few inches in the other direction. Nelson and the other mice helped each other climb back down, and Desmond was finally free. Desmond and Nelson and all their mouse friends spent the rest of that beautiful day playing in the middle of that beautiful meadow.
I just wanted to share with you all that that story was written by a Unitarian Universalist minister. So it was written just for us. And it was written based on a quote by Archbishop Desmond Tutu. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. And with that, I would like to invite the children to go to their RE classes. Thank you.
Just a quick introduction here. Thank you, Jenny, for that. Jenny is a lifelong UU from Detroit. As I mentioned earlier, she served as our Director of Religious Education from 2006 to 2011. She is currently consulting for MUU-SJN, that's the Michigan Unitarian Universalist Social Justice Network, around issues of racial and environmental justice. Jenny is also a longtime grassroots activist and teaches art in Detroit. Brian is the child of UUCF members Mert and Bev Church and attended UUCF as youth, while Jenny was our DRE. Brian is a data analyst with a local nonprofit, president of the Dearborn Library Foundation, and a grassroots activist. Please welcome Jenny and Brian.
Thank you, everyone. For the Say Their Names section of our program, I just wanted to go into a little bit of history on what that is. So it's a derivative of Say Her Name, which is a movement created by Kimberly Crenshaw to uplift those who were murdered by police in the gay, trans, femme, black, and other intersections community. They often see a lot more racial disparity in terms of victimization in this way, and their stories don't get as much media attention. I don't feel personally, first I should say, this has also grown to, at protests, become kind of a call and response thing where you're uplifting their names, hence Say Her Name, or Say Their Name in this case. I don't really want to do that kind of thing here. It doesn't seem to be the appropriate application of it. But in the spirit of uplifting overlooked voices in our communities, especially when it comes to police murders of black people especially, but anyone, I want to take a moment to encourage you all to look locally. It might feel like a lot of these big headlines aren't happening in our backyard, and that's only because the media attention focuses on the most blatantly egregious murders by police, and that some headlines that deserve more attention often go unnoticed. So I ask you all to read the news with a more critical eye. Oftentimes, police murders are happening during a mental health crisis for individuals, and it's because guns aren't the proper response to a mental health crisis. And that's even just saying the least. So there are these kinds of instances happening locally. In my work in Dearborn, I'm aware of multiple instances of police murders which aren't getting the same kinds of attention as, you know, the Breonna Taylors and George Floyds of the world. And, you know, so whether you live in Farmington Hills, Novi, Livonia, what have you, these kinds of things are happening, and I just encourage you to think critically about it and try to hold those systems of power accountable.
I can hear my neighbor crying, saying, I can't breathe. And now I'm in the struggle, saying I can't leave. We're calling out the violence of the racist bullies, and we ain't gonna stop until the people are free. I can hear my neighbor crying, saying I can't breathe. And now I'm in the struggle, saying I can't leave. We're calling out the violence of the racist police, and we ain't gonna stop until the people are free. I can hear my neighbor crying, saying I can't breathe. And now I'm in the struggle, saying I can't leave. We're calling out the violence of the racist police, and we ain't gonna stop, no, until the people are free. Hey, I can hear my neighbor crying, saying I can't breathe. And now I'm in the struggle, saying I can't leave. We're calling out the violence of the racist police, and we ain't gonna stop until the people are free. We ain't gonna stop. I can't breathe. We ain't gonna stop. No, we ain't gonna stop. We ain't gonna stop. No, hey, we ain't gonna stop. I can't breathe. We ain't gonna stop. No, we ain't gonna stop. No, we ain't gonna stop. I can't breathe.
Now I'd like to share a few words from James Baldwin. There is no reason for you to try to become like white people, and there is no basis whatever for their impertinent assumption that they must accept you. The terrible thing, old buddy, is that you must accept them, and I mean that very seriously. You must accept them and accept them with love, for these innocent people have no other hope. They are, in effect, still trapped in a history which they do not understand, and until they understand it, they cannot be released from it. They have had to believe for many years and for innumerable reasons that black men are inferior to white men. Many of them indeed know better, but as you will discover, people find it very difficult to act on what they know. Thank you for having Jen and I here this morning. Discussions on race, white supremacy, and class are so very important, especially in predominantly white spaces. These topics are vast, interconnected, and complicated, and we can only hope to take one step in a lifetime of learning and re-education with you here today. These topics are uncomfortable, but discomfort is a good thing. We hope you will take time to sit in your discomfort and learn and grow from it. We also hope you will find value in what we share with you, and perhaps will invite us back for further exploration of these topics. When entering into discussion on any topic, it is important to set some non-negotiables. In the interest of setting the groundwork for Jen's portion, as well as individual conversations downstairs at coffee hour and in the future, I want to spend my time talking about non-negotiables, why they are important, and what ours are. So what is a non-negotiable? These are foundational understandings when discussing a topic that are not open to discussion or consideration. Some simple examples from everyday life are most monogamous individuals have fidelity as a non-negotiable, or when buying a car, you have that base assumption that the car you will be buying will be the US standard, driver's seat on the left. These may be simple or silly examples, but it helps illustrate how if an expectation isn't met from the get-go, it will be hard to have further discussion on the topic. When talking about race, a common, often unspoken non-negotiable is that racism exists. Imagine if, when speaking to folks, I had to defend the belief that racism exists before being able to dive into more nuanced topics. This is why non-negotiables are important. They allow you to focus on important topics without getting sidetracked, arguing semantics, or justifying base assumptions. They also allow you to set a walking away point with people who are not worth entering discussion with. Another common non-negotiable when discussing race is that racist ideas and outcomes are the result of social constructs made by humans. That is to say, race itself and all of the structures and beliefs surrounding race, humans came up with that. A person who disagrees with this likely holds the belief that racist ideas and outcomes are the result of the natural or divine order. Let me use an example. I do a lot of work in Dearborn, so my examples often come from my work there. In Dearborn, analysis of police data showed that between the years 2009 and 2020, 54% of all people arrested in Dearborn were black, despite only making up about 3% of the Dearborn population and 22% of the entire Metro Detroit population. So, when discussing this information, if we agree on the non-negotiable that these outcomes are the result of human-made social constructs, we can enter into discussion about Dearborn's racist legacy, created by the likes of Henry Ford, Mayor Orville Hubbard, and others, and how their decisions and policies are still impacting the city today. We could also talk about the police's Border Crimes Initiative team, specifically created to patrol Dearborn's border with majority black Detroit and no other borders. And so on. These are just a few examples. So if we were having this discussion with someone who has not agreed that these outcomes are the result of human-made constructs, but rather believes it is due to natural or divine construct, we may instead have to discuss whether these outcomes are because of something in black people's inherent nature or biology that makes them more criminal, or that Noah cursed them for being of the tribe of Ham, and so on. Not only does pursuing these lines of inquiry give credence to these racist ideas, but by taking the human-made element out of the discussion, we cannot move on to discuss human-made solutions. Any social construct can be changed or dismantled. We have that power. It is also important to distinguish non-negotiables from firmly held beliefs. As valid as firmly held beliefs can be, if they would alienate a majority of people, they would not make a good non-negotiable. Remember, the purpose is not to shut down people who disagree with you, but to make sure Important discussions on things you may disagree about are built on a shared foundation. For instance, when confronting elected officials in Dearborn on issues of racism, a common line I often heard from those of Arab descent was along the lines of, "I have experienced discrimination myself and could not possibly engage in discrimination of others." It is my firmly held belief that one can be both the oppressor and the oppressed. But I never hold that as a non-negotiable. Going back to my non-negotiable that racism exists, as long as someone is willing to accept that racism exists, even if they do not believe they are capable of it themselves as a victim of discrimination, sharing the common ground that racism exists lays the foundation for us to have a discussion about the more nuanced topic of dualities, being two things simultaneously, such as oppressed and oppressor. So now I've told you a little bit about non-negotiables. I want to share ours. First is that racism exists and is a social construct. In addition, white supremacy exists and is a social construct. In fact, any system of discrimination, separation, or othering in our society is a social construct, but I want to specifically call out racism and white supremacy for our discussion here today. As social constructs, our third and final non-negotiable is any barrier humans created can be undone or changed by humans. When discussing topics on the human condition, it is important to remember that we are the architects of society and have the power to change literally any part of it. This is so important to keep in mind. Sometimes it can feel as if these societal problems are simply too big and complex to fix. But remember, we got here on systems we built, often by people in positions of power with toxic ideas. We have the power to root out the poison and make positive change. This work is not easy or comfortable. It often asks us to abandon the familiar, which is broken, for the unknown, which is just. Before turning it over to Jen, I would like to leave you with some words from Ibram X. Kendi. The opposite of racist isn't not racist. It is anti-racist. What's the difference? One endorses either the idea of a racial hierarchy as racist or racial equality as an anti-racist. One either believes problems are rooted in groups of people as a racist or locates the roots of problems in power and policies as an anti-racist. One either allows racial inequalities to persevere as a racist or confronts racial inequalities as an anti-racist. There is no in-between safe space of not racist. Thank you.
Good morning. I want to invite you all to take a deep breath. Feel your feet on the ground and your back against the pew. Look to the sides and behind you. You are grounded and supported. You are surrounded by a loving community. This is heavy stuff we are engaging in this morning. This work is deep, and we often have trauma-affiliated, even generational trauma, buried deep inside of us. Thank you for being here. When discussing structural racism and white supremacy, it is common to experience feelings of confusion, shame, blame, anger, sadness, grief, and guilt. If you are, or as you experience any of these, I encourage you to sit with it for a moment, then try to take a note and come back to it later when you have more space. At that time, you may decide to write, draw, talk to a friend, do yoga, or something that helps you work through those feelings without ignoring them. And then prepare yourself to begin again with love. Of course, if you need to take a physical break from this space this morning, that is okay too. Honor your body. Spaces of safety, comfort, and rest are necessary in this work. If you are a white person, you just have to make the commitment to come back and make space for discomfort and struggle as well. Let's take another collective breath. The United States was founded on enslavement and genocide. Racism has been entwined into the fabric of our country since that time. To this day, Black people continue to be harmed, kept down, and murdered due to structural racism. Policing specifically continues to enslave and kill Black people in our country every day. Structural racism functions due to white supremacy. In order to end structural racism, we must uproot white supremacy. Not the white supremacist we often think of with white hoods and burning crosses, but the white supremacy culture in our own institutions, in our own bodies and minds. What I've learned is that without even realizing it, while saying I am an anti-racist, I engage in behaviors and benefit from white supremacy. These behaviors, beliefs, and values have been passed on from one generation to the next, generally without even thinking about them. In the Challenging White Supremacy Workshop, Sharon Martinez offers this definition. White supremacy culture is the ideology that white people and the ideas, thoughts, beliefs, and actions of white people are superior to those of people of color. Has anyone ever read the document or heard of the characteristics of white supremacy culture? I see a couple head nods. In the late 1990s, Tima Oken listed 15 characteristics of white supremacy culture, behaviors that she recognized in our organizations and personal lives. She wasn't suggesting this as a final list. In fact, much work has been done on this since then. Ask me for info in coffee hour or send me an email for more information. I was first introduced to this list about 7 years ago by my friend Carolina. She was a UU who worked with the UUA's Allies for Racial Equity. She is now an ancestor, and I miss her so much. This tool immediately helped me understand some things about spaces and work environments I was in, but also about myself. In fact, I've learned to walk with a little more confidence after realizing many of these behaviors I've struggled with or resisted are in fact characteristics of white supremacy culture that has been ingrained in me since before my birth. These are things I should be calling out and resisting. They are not healthy for my body or for our institutions. I hope this new information or review will help you to name and see clearer the ingrained conditioning in each of us and to discover ways to counter or pivot from that behavior. Here are a few of the characteristics that show up frequently for me personally or in spaces I'm in. Perfectionism, a sense of urgency, defensiveness, power hoarding, fear of open conflict, individualism, and the right to comfort. Do any of those sound familiar to you personally or in spaces you've been? Oken wrote, "Our institutions not only value these characteristics, they to some extent require them and constantly reproduce them in order to benefit from them. In fact, white supremacy culture trains us all to internalize attitudes and behaviors that do not serve any of us." Our experience of white supremacy culture and our navigation of white supremacy culture is very different based on who we are and our lived experience, our race, our class, our gender, our sexuality, our religion. It's clear that BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color communities, are harmed the most by structural racism and white supremacy culture, but we are all negatively impacted. We must all get free from this oppression. Our liberation is bound together. As I considered the question, could these harmful behaviors be happening within the structures of our denomination, our own UU congregations, I remember the image that we chose for the cover of the Order of Service. Let's look at it a bit together as we consider if and where some of the characteristics of white supremacy culture manifest here at UUCF or other institutions you have a close, familiar relationship with. Institutional. When white supremacy manifests in the policies and practices of the organization. Some examples of this show up with inadequate outreach to create a qualified and diverse hiring pool or membership. Tokenizing people of color in employment or other positions of power. Formal education is valued over life experience. Cultural. When white supremacy manifests in the beliefs and moral code that govern the organization, this can show up as selective urgency, a sense of priority for quantifiable, funder-driven deliverables. All those grants, gotta hurry up and get them. But the time is not urgent for community building or equity work implementation. Little time is set aside for learning. Political education, dissent, and potential change are perceived as threats. Does any of this sound familiar? There are pivots and antidotes to these behaviors that can be made to change the systems. And in fact, the resources I'm pulling from have some specifics instead listed that I hope you will look closer at. And in fact, the resource list in the middle of your order of service, I hope you'll go home and Google those, and that's where I'm pulling a lot of this from today. I'd like to spend some time exploring this other great resource I found. Continuum on Becoming a Transformative Anti-Oppression Organization. I'll share a little, but hope you'll look closer at this resource on your own or with others. As we continue to learn and pivot, we can move forward on this continuum. Listen and consider, where does UUCF fall on this continuum? Depending on your perspective, you may not all agree. This continuum offers 6 types of institutions: exclusionary, tokenizing, compliance, affirming, transforming, and transformative. Think about both where you're at and where you want to be. Most UUs would be quick to say their congregation is not a tokenizing institution. However, some of the folks from oppressed groups may have a different perspective. You'd probably be surprised to hear that UUCF is likely at the compliance point, an institution that sees itself as, quote, non-oppressive and welcomes all people. However, is still relatively unaware of continuing patterns of privilege, paternalism, and control. So there is little or no change in culture, policies, and decision-making. I've been away from UUCF for a long time. Maybe you see yourself as an affirming congregation. This institution develops an analysis on privilege, power, and systematic oppression. They begin to develop accountable relationships to oppressed communities and begin integrating anti-oppression politics into organizational policies and governance documents. Some of our congregations are even transforming institutions. They are in the process of intentional institutional restructuring based upon anti-oppression analysis and identity. People more impacted by systematic oppression are involved in determining organizational structures and practices. These institutions commit to dismantle oppression in the wider community and build clear lines of accountability with oppressed communities. The final point on this continuum is transformative. Here, the members across all identity groups work in horizontal relationships to determine the organization's mission, structures, policies, and practices. They actively work in solidarity in large communities to eliminate oppression in all forms. I encourage you to think about and discuss later what pivots UUCF can take to move forward on the continuum. Excuse me. Progressive radical transformation to structures is necessary. In order to uproot white supremacy culture, In order to create new structures, we need to act. We can't remain neutral. It's not enough to be not racist. Not racist people are neutral, like the giraffe and gazelle in the story about Desmond the mouse. The mice that got involved, finally freeing Desmond, were the anti-racists. So it wouldn't make sense to leave today without a call to action. So here are a few. Discover who the anti-racist organizations are being led by people of color right here in Farmington and in the other cities that you live and work in. One that I've learned about in Farmington is the Community Equity Organization. I encourage you to check out their website and then invite their executive director, Danielle Ware, to come speak at a service with suggestions for how you can engage with their work. Invite Brian and I back to speak more on anti-racism, abolition, and eighth principle work. And I hope to see you back here in a couple weeks when Brian and Accountability for Dearborn present at the Sunday Save the World sessions on anti-racism and carceral abolition for 2 Sundays, December 11th and 18th at 7 p.m. Thank you. I would like to invite you to join us in responsive hymn number 1037. Please stand as you are able. First I just want to thank Diana and the choir members who've come up to the front to help us, because this is a new hymn for you, and it's even a new hymn for me, but I picked it because of the words, which you'll understand momentarily. So Brian and I are going to narrate, and then you all are going to respond. For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference.
For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible.
For each time we have struck out in anger without just cause.
For each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others.
For the selfishness that sets us apart and alone.
For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit.
For losing sight of our unity.
For those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness.
Okay, thank you so much, Jenny and Brian, and thank you for issuing that challenge to us. And I'm sure all of us are very, very much interested in internalizing that for each of ourselves and moving forward with you on that. Thank you. We're going to move ahead with our offering words today. For the gifts which we have received and the gifts which we ourselves are, may we truly be grateful. May we be committed to using these gifts to make a difference in the world, to increase love and justice, to decrease hatred and oppression, to expand beloved community, to share and to keep sharing as long as ever we can. Okay, at this time, excuse me, if you are visiting us for the first time and you are comfortable doing so, please stand and tell us where you're from and how you heard about us. We would like to meet you. Anyone new? Okay. We will move forward with our joys and sorrows. A perfect heart is one that has known love and loss, joy and sorrow. The perfect heart is one that has been shared. As joys and sorrows of our community are shared, please direct your energy, prayers, and meditations as a gift of compassion and strength.
you see in the order of service, there are closing words by Angela Davis. I was going to play a recording of her voice for you. It's on YouTube. I'm going to encourage you instead to look it up and find it on your own. It's good. But as often, people who are sermonizing are staying up late into the night, fine-tuning what they want to say. And what I found, I decided I needed to share with you. And my computer's like, well, maybe not.
No, we can.
Maybe it's a chance to drink of water. It's coming. I think sometimes the technology just reminds us that we need to breathe, right? It's coming. I have been focusing hard on learning and relearning over the last 10 years or so. And yet I am still embarrassed by what I don't know or feel overwhelming guilt for the harm I or my ancestors have caused. It is easy to get discouraged and fall back into conditioned thoughts and do nothing but wallow in my own feelings. I appreciate this story I found about metamorphosis and how with the death of old ways of being, new ways of thinking can emerge. This is an excerpt from Leon Vanderpool's book, A Shift in Being. Metamorphosis for a caterpillar is a process of death and emergence, not morphing. Wrapped in its cocoon, its body decays and disintegrates into a blob of premortal goo, a nutrient-rich stew of death cells, mixed with some bits and pieces of the caterpillar's innards. Then one day, something remarkable happens. In the midst of the puddle of decaying ooze, a new cell pops up. Ping! These cells have been called imaginal cells because they are imagining what is possible. The immune system of the dying caterpillar, taking the imaginal cell to be some sort of enemy form, attacks and kills it. Another imaginal cell then pops up. Ping! And the immune system again trounces it. Soon, a number of imaginal cells pop up. Ping, ping, ping. And the immune system, although it's beginning to fail from stress of death, continues to fight. In time, however, the imaginal cells pop up faster and in greater numbers than the fading immune system can kill them off. And then, because the imaginal cells are encoded with the program to create a butterfly, they start joining together to form cell clusters. Clusters of wing cells, antenna cells, digestive tract cells, and others take form. The cell clusters eventually form together and the transformation is complete. The butterfly emerges as an altogether new entity. I love to visualize this metamorphosis in my own life as I transform from goo into a beautiful full being, but also to imagine the metamorphosis of our neighborhoods, congregations, organizations, and our culture. We are the imaginal cells. We are imagining what is possible. And if we take on this work and do it well, cells will keep popping up, clusters will form, and an altogether new system will emerge from our own imaginations. Thank you. Oh, and we're going to do something to shake it up, because I like to shake things up. We're going to sing our postlude, one of my favorite familiar tunes, Spirit of Life. So please join as you are able for hymn number 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3, okay. sisters.